and welcome to preparing a 1040 tax return. I'll begin up here in the corner with these tabs. This is the 1040 returns tab. This is what we're on right now. It allows us to access and prepare 1040 tax returns. Of course, the business tab is for the business side of things, for the 1120s, 1065s, and that sort of thing. And then we have a link to our website on the final tab. Just below the tabs we have our menu bar. This is administrative features, and there are some features in there that we can use with the program, but for the most part they're setup features. I won't be going too much into this menu. One of the things to know about this menu, however, is that the values here change. The options change depending on where you are within the program. We do that because we don't want to clutter up the interface with tools that you can't use on the screen that you happen to be on. Below that we have our toolbar. The toolbar is a collection of tools that you can utilize with a single click. Like the menu bar above, the tools here change depending on where you are in the program. Below that is, of course, the information bar, this black band across the screen here. The information on it changes depending on where you are in the program. Again, we do that so we don't clutter up the interface with things that you're not using. Okay, there's a couple ways to start a tax return. One way, the easiest way, and I'll get right to it, is this button here, the Add New button. I'm going to go ahead and click that and begin a tax return. Okay, we're going to key our Social Security number in there. Now when we open the tax return, the first screen we land on is the client data screen, this area here. This is the area where we're going to work in mostly. The form we're on is the client data, actually. Information that we key here is going to flow to the rest of the return. But before I get too deep into that stuff, I'm going to explain a little bit about what we're looking at here. Again, I'm going to start up here. This is the same, the tabs. We have some new options here. We have a print option and a return option, and we have a vast number of tools available to us now as well. And you can see that the information bar now contains information about the taxpayer. The left-hand side is the attached forms pane. It shows the forms that are attached to the tax return. I will be going over this a little bit more just a little later. Down below we have our active window. This is where we're going to go for help and access to some nifty features that are going to help us along the way as we prepare the tax return. So I'm going to show you more in depth when it's relevant about this active window. Okay, let's begin. Like I said, the client data screen, this is where we enter the information about the taxpayer. Information that we type here flows to the rest of the return, the federal return and any state returns, so you don't have to type the same thing over and over. So we're going to start with the date of birth. What I want you to see while I'm here on the date of birth is down below at the active window. If you don't know where something goes in the program, take a look downwards at the active window. You can see here, being tax professionals, DOB, we can figure out it means date of birth. But if you didn't know, you could look below and see that the program is requesting the date of birth. We're going to go ahead and fill the name. And I'm going to pause here on the occupation field because some stuff is going on. Down here at the active window, we have a choices button. Now, I'm hovering over the choices button with my cursor, and as I do, you can note the tooltip that appears. It's notifying me that I can press F3 to use these same features as the choices button. The choices button gives me a list of choices that I can select from on the occupation. Now I can type anything I want, but if I type one of these, watch what happens. So let's say I want to type minister. I'm going to press the letter M, and you can see that the program is predicting what I want to type based on my input thus far. Minister is what I'm looking for. I'm going to continue to type minister, M-I, and now the program is suggesting that I want minister. So it's like Google in that sense. To accept the suggestion, I could also continue to type minister as well. We'll demonstrate a little bit more about that in the next few minutes here. So again, if we're not sure, look below. We place an X here if the taxpayer can be claimed as dependent on another return. Now, I'm not going to walk through an entire return today, but I'm going to go through enough of the return so we can cover everything that you need to know about preparing a return yourself. So I'm going to skip on down here to the cell number. The cell number is important because we have a feature in the program that allows you to communicate with the taxpayer's cell phone. You can send text messages to the cell phone. So if you collect their cell phone for this purpose, you'll also need to collect their cell carrier. And I'm going to skip over the email message and end up here on the text message field. Right here, what is it asking for us? It says place an X here if the customer agrees to receive text messages. So if you don't check this box, you can't utilize the send text message feature. So I'm going to place an X there, press tab, and here's the point where I was asking you, or I was telling you about the cell phone carrier. The cell phone carrier is required for the send text message feature to work. Now, if our customer, our taxpayer, is using AT&T, we can begin typing AT&T. The letter A brings up ACS Alaska. So just like the occupation field above, the cell phone carrier field is also predicting for us. However, ACS Alaska is not what I want to type. I'm going to continue, press T, and there's AT&T. There's the selection I'm looking for. I'm going to go press enter on that now. Now you know that you can come down here and press the choices button, or you can press the F3 button. Selecting one of these, double-clicking any of these is going to also place it right in there for us. Alright, we're going to go to the filing status. In the filing status, we know that we can look below and see the valid options that we can put in this field. I'm going to leave it at single, press tab, and cursor skipped over the spouse. That's because it's a single return. No sense in bringing you places you don't need to go. So this program has skipped over that for us, so we can go ahead and type our address. Below we have combat information if taxpayer has been in combat. The bank information, this is the taxpayer's information, remember. So this is the taxpayer's bank. We're going to use this, we're going to collect this information from the taxpayer if the taxpayer wants to either do a direct debit if they owe, or if they want a direct deposit if they're getting a refund. So remember, this is for the taxpayer. Look, the letter B brings up the Bank of America suggestion, just like those other fields. I'm going to go ahead and accept Bank of America, enter in my account number, and when I do, the program is going to mask what I just typed and ask me to please re-enter the same information one more time to verify. Okay, so we're going to move on down here. We're going to answer some healthcare questions. We are going to land here on the dependents field. So just answer these questions here that we skipped over in a way that best fits the taxpayer's situation. So we're going to type a dependent here. Okay. So this is going to be a daughter. I simply type the letter D, accept daughter, and press enter. The MO field, MO, that's the number of months the dependent lived with the taxpayer. We're going to put 12 there. Now I want you to notice what happens with these codes here. When I press the tab key to go to the next field, these codes automatically populated. We don't know what they are yet. I haven't clicked on them so you can't see. But this number 1 was placed in here as well. It is a dependent code. The dependent code, we can press F3 or press choices to see what number 1 is. The dependent lived with the taxpayer. That's the most common status. We're going to put that in there for you automatically every time. If it's something else, please go ahead and choose the proper selection. The letter E here in this code, in this box, this is eligible for EIC. You have these other ones available too if that is more appropriate. Moving on, the letter X indicates that this is eligible. The child is eligible for the child tax credit. Now this one is a box and it's asking us if there was a dependent care for this child. If there is, we could place an X there. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Now you'll notice, however, that the 2441 did not get added to the tax return, and that is because we want it to remain fast. So we're not calculating the tax return on every field that you navigate to or from. We do the calculations after we either navigate away from this form into another form, or if I press the refresh button. Now the refresh button is going to force the program to calculate the data that I've put in there thus far, and part of that data is this, the indicator that says I want to add a 2441. So when I click refresh, the 2441 is automatically going to be added to the tax return. Here we go, and there's the 2441 just like we asked the program to do. Okay, once we have the information captured about the taxpayer, it's time to add income. So there's sort of a flow to the tax return. We're going to add information, the client data information first. The next thing we're going to do is add income to the tax return. That is in the form of W-2s, 1099s, K-1s, things like this. So let's add a W-2. There are a number of ways to add tax forms to the return. One of the easiest ways, if you're one of those types of folks that likes to keep their hands on the keyboard, is Control-A. Now notice when I hover over this button up here, it tells me that I can push Control-A as well. This is the Add Forms button. I can also click this button to add the form to the tax return. Now these little tooltips are available just like you saw down below in the active window. They're available throughout the program, so you can quickly learn what it takes to keep your hands on the keyboard and off the mouse so you can be as quick as possible. So like I said, we're going to add a form W2. I'm going to click Add Form, and it's going to open the All Forms and Schedules window. The default form it always lands on is W2 because that is the most popular form that's added to the return. Now there are ways that we can easily add other forms. For instance, if I wanted to add a 1099 instead of a W2. Now I haven't typed anything, I haven't clicked on anything, but the program has made this field here the hot field, and I'll show you what I mean. I don't have to click on it, but when I start typing, it starts typing in this box, and it starts moving down this list to find what it is I might be wanting to add to the tax return. In this case, it suggested I might want a 1099 because I had typed 1099. But what if I wanted to add a Schedule C? I simply start typing, and I can type the letter C. Backspace, and then A will add a Schedule A. Let's add that W2, though. If I press W, now since that is highlighted, I only need to press Enter to add the W2. Now the W2, it looks a lot like the form that the taxpayer is going to bring in. Simply copy the data that's in the on the taxpayer copy and place it right here into the program. It lands us here on the employer identification number. There's a database here. Anytime you enter an employee identification number into the program on a tax return, it's going to store that in a database. So all of the EIN numbers that I have captured up until this point are stored in the database. So I'm going to begin typing the number 9, and it's predicting some EIN numbers. I'm going to go ahead and accept that first one and press Enter, and it accepted it, and it brought all the data that it had in the database that I had typed in earlier when I did a different taxpayer that had the same EIN number on it. So we're going to type in some wages for this person and then press Enter. It's going to automatically fill in the taxpayer's W2, and we simply enter the federal tax withheld. Okay, we've got our W2 entered. Now, I'd like to bring your attention back over here to the attached forms list. You can see here that the federal amount, the refund amount, is 0. We have no refund and we owe nothing so far, yet I've got a W2. Well, remember, I have to press refresh because the program has not yet calculated the information that I had typed in there. So I'm going to press refresh, and you can see here that the program, it's turned it green for us, indicating that we have a refund coming of $5,815. Now, if this was a balance due return, we could see the balance due here, but this would be in red. Let's add some depreciation. Depreciation, before you add any items to depreciate, you need something to depreciate it against. So we're going to do a Schedule C. Now, to add a form, remember, I can press Control A, or I can click this button up here. I'm going to press Control A this time. And then remember, don't have to touch the mouse. Press the letter C because we're adding a Schedule C, and then I'm going to press Enter. All right, it brings us to a Schedule C, and from here we can begin our Schedule C. So let's name this is a lawn care. Now we have a Schedule C. Granted, it's not filled out. That's something that we can do, but we're going to add some depreciation. There are two types of depreciation. How do we add it? Well, there are two ways. We can either click the Add Form button, or we can press on our keyboard Control N. That's Control N as in Nancy. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And you'll see what happens. It opens up the All Forms and Schedules window. It's that same window that has all of the forms on it that we looked at earlier, except Control N brings us to the depreciation tab. So I mentioned there are two types of depreciation. There are cars and trucks, and then everything else. And I'll demonstrate why cars and trucks are done separately. But let's add a standard asset, something that's not a car or truck, against our Schedule C. And let's say this is a computer. So when I double click Schedule C, it opens up all of the assets that we have associated with that Schedule C. And nothing has been associated with it yet, so let's create a new one. And this is going to be a HP computer, and we put our date, place, and service. I'm going to leave it as it is for simplicity's sake, and choose the right class code here, computers and peripheral equipment. We're going to click OK, and then all that we need to do is key in the expense, and then we can click Close. And this is a special depreciation allowance. We can click this box if we want to elect out of it. We're going to go ahead and remain and click OK. And there is our first asset. It's an HP computer. It's been associated with our Schedule C. Now, what if we want to add a car or truck? To demonstrate why we have separated cars and trucks, the first thing I'm going to do is add another Schedule C. So Control A and then C and then enter. Now at this point it's asking us if we want to access our current Schedule C or create a new occurrence. We're going to create a new occurrence, and this one is going to be computer manufacturing. Okay, and now we can add that truck. So let's do Control N as in Nancy. There we have our two Schedule C's. This time I'm going to do a truck. Here's all of our trucks that we have associated with a return. Nothing so far. Let's click New. This is going to be a Toyota. And then we've got our date, place, and service here. Let's choose the proper class code. Click OK. And like before, we simply key in the dollar amount. But with a vehicle, the IRS has some questions that we must answer. Once the questions have been answered, we can then go to the Mileage and Expenses tab. Now we get into the reason why we have cars and trucks broken out from other standard assets. The reason is that for cars and trucks, we enter one asset and we can apply it to multiple Schedule C's, multiple businesses, I should say. We can use it for Schedule E's and the like as well. We enter our total vehicle mileage. This is the total vehicle mileage for the year. Okay, and then we put the miles that the truck drove in the capacity of the lawn care business, and then in the capacity of the computer manufacturing business. We can fill in our actual expenses. The program is going to determine for us what is best for the taxpayer, most beneficial, actual expenses or mileage. You can choose just to enter your mileage or just enter actual expenses here too. We're going to enter some gas here. And once all that is complete, we can click close. Again, the special depreciation. We can go here. I'm going to return to list. I'm going to go back to the tax return so you can see what has happened. Here is the Schedule C for our computer manufacturer. There is our truck. Now you may ask yourself, do I really have to push Control N and do all that stuff if I just want to do mileage? If I know I want to do mileage, do I have to do that? The answer to that is no. You can come here to the Schedule C. Right here on Part 4 and enter the mileage here as well. Now, I recommend against this because information keyed in here will not be brought forward into the next year. If you press Control N and enter the vehicle in as an asset, you're going to be reminded each year that there's a vehicle that you need to deal with. If you enter it directly here on the return, you're just going to have to remember about that vehicle because this information is not brought forward. Okay, so how do we add a state to the tax return? Adding a state is very easy. There are two ways to do it. We can press the Add Form button, or we can press Control S. Control S as in Sam will open the All Forms and Schedules window. I'm going to click Add Form and then click State because that's a valid way of doing it. Control S brings up this All Forms and Schedules window but lands you right on the State tab, much like Control N landed you on the Depreciation tab. So from here, once we're at the state, we can simply choose our state from the list and double-click the main form that you want to add to the tax return, and there is our California return. So now that we have California over here, it's a good time to talk more a little bit about the attached forms list. What if you added California and you didn't mean to? Well, you can easily remove it. I can right-click on it and simply remove the state. The state's gone. Now let's add the state that we really wanted to. Colorado. Now Colorado's been attached. Once we look at Colorado and we're satisfied with it, we can go back over here to the Schedule C. Remember, you can double click over here and right click on anything. We can remove them and access them this way here on the attached forms list. The next thing you might want to do is prepare the return for e-filing. Sometimes the program is automatically configured to add an 8879 to every tax return. Mine happens to be that way. But remember, if the 8879 isn't present, you can always add the form by pressing Control A or Add Form and simply typing 8879. So let's go ahead and access the 8879. When I do, I'm brought to the refund type. This is where we choose how the taxpayer should receive their refund. Number one is a direct check from the IRS. If you choose option 1, the IRS is going to mail the taxpayer a check. You will have to collect your prep fees directly from the taxpayer. The same with option 2. This is a direct deposit from the IRS. If you choose direct deposit, you're not going to get paid unless the taxpayer pays you directly. Number 3 isn't used, but number 4 we're going to use if it's balance due return. Number 5, if you want your fees to come from the tax refund, choose option number 5. That's what we're going to do in this case. And when we choose option 5, the return is ready to e-file once we've completed all of the information here. Now, how do we know it's ready to e-file? We know so because we press verify and have the program check it for us. When I press verify, the program is going to look at this return and find all the reasons why it's not ready to go to the IRS yet. And boy, it's not ready. Look at all the reasons it's found. It's very easy to fix these problems, however. We simply double click to go to the field that's causing us a problem. So I'm going to double click here, and you can see I've missed a couple of questions. This happens to be the healthcare related question. Did the taxpayer receive health coverage throughout the year? Well, yes, they did. Let's place an X there, and then I'm going to press enter and watch what happens when I press enter. It goes down the list. That one has fallen off the list, and now we have another piece of data that's been missing. Let's press enter to find out where it takes us. It's taken us up a little bit. We have to answer this question. Would we like to add this product to our return? No, I don't want to add this. I'm going to put an N there. It's asking me to confirm it. Look, it's fallen off the list and gone to the third one. So you get the idea about how this verify feature works. Press enter, access the information. Press enter again to after you fixed it to go on to the next one. So that is how this works. So let's click close, and I'm going to show you what's next, because after you have all of these errors fixed and resolved, the next thing you're going to want to do is print it. I'm not going to make you watch as I complete the tax return. Instead, I'm going to open up a new tax return, one that's already been completed. So if I click verify on this one, you can see that there are no errors. It's ready to go. I can now print this tax return, and then I'll show you how we can send it to the IRS. So to print the tax return, we have the print option here, but this one's the easiest. It's a tool right here on the toolbar. Click print, and it gives us this window here. Now, if we happen to have the signature pad, we can now sign the tax return here, but I would imagine most of us will be printing the tax return using this button here. Doing so will print a hard copy of the tax return. Okay, after the return's been printed and signed, it's then time to transmit the tax return. To transmit the tax return, it's actually quite easy. First thing we need to do, however, is queue the tax return. We need to put it in the transmission queue. To do so, we're going to push this button up here, the Q button. Notice the tooltip. It says to press Control T. Again, if you're one of the types of folks who like to keep their hands on the keyboard, hover over this button and learn those tips. Control T. So I'm going to press Q. The program is going to say which ones do you want to send. Do you want to send the federal and California? In this case, I've selected both of them, and I can press Q. And when I do, the return is going to close and bring us back to the work in progress screen. You can see here that the status has changed from completed back to return queued, because I've now put it back in the transmit queue. We can press transmit from here, and from here, this is how we initiate the final transmission to empty our queue, if you will, of all the tax returns that have been put in the queue. We're going to click transmit. Okay, that is how you prepare a tax return. I hope you enjoyed the training. Thank you.